Good morning everybody. Welcome back to Harvest Moon Farm. My name is Mickey if you're new around here. Today we're going to make a bunch of things. We are going to make some more lasagnas to put in the freezer. We made some in the fall. My daughter-in-law and I did a big ground beef freezer meal day, but we have eaten all of those and I like to have those in the freezer. They're great to just pull out and throw in the oven for a nice quick dinner. So I'm going to make a bunch of lasagnas. I have some tomatoes that I started cooking down to make some tomato paste, so we're going to get that done. And then we are going to make some shrimp tacos with avocado cream sauce. That's what we're going to have for dinner tonight, so we'll be making those as well. Excuse me, so I'm going to start with the lasagna. And I've got my big bowl here that I'm going to put them in as I've got it cooked. Alright, so there is a lot of sunshine coming in from this window behind me. So let me see if I can get a better angle. So the back side of our house faces north, and I'm sorry, it doesn't face north. The back side of our house is to the east, and so that morning sun coming in through my kitchen sometimes makes it hard to see in my kitchen. Although of course I love the sunshine, and we don't have any curtains or shades or anything on our kitchen windows. It's just open field back there. There's nobody to see us, so there's no reason to put anything on there, except that it kind of makes it difficult when I'm trying to cook in the mornings. I've got out 5 pounds of ground beef and 2 pounds of breakfast sausage. I like to add that into my ground beef when I make my lasagna. I just feel like it gives it some extra flavor. So I'm just going to start cooking all of that up. Very frustrating to me that stovetops generally just have that one big burner and then 3 smaller ones, when really I feel like I need 3 big burners and 1 smaller one. But I don't know what you guys think about that. If you feel the same way, or if you like all the different sizes. But I feel like when I'm cooking a lot of different things, it would be helpful to have 2 or 3 of the regular full-size burners, especially when you're making big meals like this. But if you've watched very many of my videos, you've probably heard me complain about this electric stove. My husband and I were talking yesterday, and at some point in the future, probably won't even be this year, but at some point in the future, we're probably going to swap this out for a propane stove. We don't have any gas in our house. It's a fully electric home. It was built about 6.5 years ago, and everything's electric. There's no gas running into our home. So we would have to get a propane tank and run it in, and then get a stove that runs on propane, which I'm totally okay with, because we would only have the propane, you know, it would only provide service to just our stove and oven. So I'm looking forward to that, because when we do get to that point, I'm going to get I think I'm going to look at like the 6 burner stoves. I found some that I really like. Of course they're super expensive, but you know, when you're window shopping, price doesn't matter. Now when it comes down to actually finding something to buy, that will be different, but I can always dream about this big, beautiful multi-burner stove and double oven and all that fun stuff. But for now, I've got this and it works, even though it frustrates me. I cooked on a gas stove for, well, that's what we had when I was growing up, and then We had a gas stove in our last home for 15, 16 years, so that's what I've cooked on for a long time. So we've been here a year and I'm still struggling. I burn things a lot when I'm cooking on this stove. I was making us some grilled cheese for lunch on Friday, and I burned one side of one of my husband's sandwiches so bad that I had to pull that piece of bread off and switch it out with a new piece. And then I burned one side of my sandwich. Not terrible. I was able to just use a knife and scrape it off and it was okay, but it's so frustrating to me. All right, so this first pan is done. And I have grass-fed, grass-finished beef. This is where my beef came from. So there's not a lot of excess fat in it, but I am gonna drain whatever there is because I don't want to have that extra fat in my lasagna. All right, so I found 2 more bags of tomatoes in my freezer. So I am going to use those to make some tomato paste because I'm out. So I've had them sitting in this bowl all day, starting to thaw. And the great thing about this is that now I can just peel the skin right off. So I'm gonna peel all of these tomatoes, and I'm gonna put the peel in this bowl so I can give it to the tomatoes. I'm gonna put the peel in this other little bowl so I can give it to my chickens. And I'm going to put the tomatoes in my big roaster. And I'm pretty sure this is the last of the tomatoes, although I wouldn't swear to it, but I think this is the last batch I have in there. So sad and exciting all at the same time, since it's only January and I won't have any more tomatoes for several months. But that's okay. I've had these to be able to make things with, and this has been fabulous. In fact, a lot of them are still frozen. I think what I'm going to do is pour some more water over these so that the ones that are still more frozen than the others will start thawing enough that I can get the peel off. Tomato all over me. Okay, so I have my roaster with my tomatoes in it. I'm just gonna put those on in the roasting pan, turn it on, and just let it cook on low for several hours until these get where they're cooked down enough that I can use my immersion blender, blend them all up, and if I think it needs to be strained, I'll go ahead and strain it, and then I'll just let it keep cooking down. I have this bowl of tomato peels now that we can give our chickens, and they'll be super happy for those. And so we'll get back at this once these have cooked down a little bit. So I have been cooking my tomatoes down in my big roaster pan, and it's down far enough now that there's not a lot, so it's harder in the roaster pan to control. So I dumped what I had into this stock pot, and I'm gonna continue cooking it down here. At this point though, I'm gonna go ahead and add a teaspoon of citric acid so that I'm adding enough acid and that when I can it, it will produce, it will raise the pH enough that it's going to stay sealed. If you don't have citric acid, you can use bottled lemon or lime juice. It won't really change the flavor because you're not going to add very much, but you're adding more liquid, so that's just going to mean it's longer to cook down. So if you have citric acid and you're not opposed to using it, that's what I have, that's what I'm using. If you don't, or if you don't like the idea of using the citric acid, then you can use lemon or lime juice as long as it is bottled. So I'm just going to let that keep cooking, and we'll just check on it throughout our day here while we are making up our lasagnas. Our tomatoes actually right now are a pretty nice sauce thickness. But I have a ton of tomato sauce downstairs and I really need some more tomato paste. So I'm going to work on that. And while I finish cooking this meat, I'm going to go ahead and empty my dishwasher so that I can put dirty dishes in it as I go. I have to say too, I'm not the biggest fan of the dishwasher that was in this house when we bought it. It's smaller than the one we had at our old house, which that's fine. But it doesn't really get things very clean. So it's frustrating to pull dishes out of the dishwasher that are still dirty. All right. Can't really see here, but so I think this batch of hamburger is done. And now I'm going to cook up the sausage. All right. So all of the ground beef and sausage, oh my gosh, you can't even see me. So the ground beef and sausage has been all cooked now and drained. And so I'm going to start my water for my pasta. Just gonna add a little bit of salt to that. All right, so I'm just gonna stir the sausage and ground beef together so that it's all mixed in. Okay, I do not like ricotta cheese, or however you pronounce it. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. So I use cottage cheese. That's what my family likes. That's what we use. You feel free to use whatever you prefer. You can add veggies if you like. We typically just do the meat, the sauce, and the cheese. But, you know, so lasagna is one of those things that's pretty versatile. There are lots of different recipes out there and lots of different ways to make it and lots of ways to just make it what you want. So that is what you should do, is just adjust the ingredients to yours and your own family's likes. This is what we like, so that's how I'm going to make it. I brought up 4 pint jars of my pasta sauce. I don't know if this is going to be enough. I have more in my basement storage, but this was all I could carry safely at one time. So we'll see how this goes. And if I need more, I can just go get it. So I'm going to add, I'm going to add a couple of jars of sauce in here. And we're going to stir this up and see what it looks like. Definitely need another jar. All right, I think I am going to need to go get another, at least 1 more jar of sauce, maybe 2. I'll probably bring up 2 just in case. Maybe 3. And I also need to go get my mozzarella cheese out of my refrigerator that's downstairs. All right, so it turns out I have 3 jars left now, so I definitely will need to make more pasta sauce with this year's tomatoes, which hopefully will come from my own garden this year. Even if my dad also gives me some, I'm perfectly happy with that. But if I need more sauce, if I want to make more sauce before I start getting tomatoes this year, I do have plenty of tomatoes canned downstairs. I have tomato sauce. I have a tomato, onion, garlic base that can be used to make pretty much anything that you would make typically with tomatoes. Okay, I think that looks good. All right, so that looks like that. So now I'm going to get all these jars in the dishwasher. Okay, got all those in the dishwasher, and I'm not really sure how much this is going to make. I've got these small little aluminum pans. I usually make them in the bigger pans, but since it's just my husband and I at home now, we have leftovers, but it's almost too much. So I'm gonna make them in these little square pans. I have a bunch of lasagna noodles left over from when my daughter-in-law and I made lasagna and other ground beef dishes in, I think it was September. So I'm gonna make all that's left in here, and gosh, let's see. Maybe I'll go ahead and just make it all. And I may have more boxes in my pantry that I haven't found that are buried. I have been going to get that main cabinet that I have in my kitchen cleaned out and organized, and I have not done it yet. So I'm going to cook all of this, and I think this should be plenty, and I may have some left over. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in the pot to start boiling. And I actually had this box, I had these noodles in the water before I realized that they were oven ready, but I think since I'm planning to freeze these, I should go ahead and boil them anyway. So that's good. These packages that I bought have 3 of this size in each one, so I'm going to go ahead and lay out 6. Oh my goodness. I'm going to lay out 6 pans because I know I'll be able to make at least 6 pans, maybe more. Alright, so I've got most of those noodles down in the boiling water and cooking, so I'm going to go downstairs and get my mozzarella cheese that I bought specifically for the lasagna. Definitely one of the things I'm going to need to do during this pantry challenge is make some more pasta sauce, because I usually start with just plain sauce in the bottom of my pan so the noodles don't stick. So I just opened my last jar. So I am going to go ahead and put some in each of these pans. Kind of spread it around. So the noodles are about half done. I just checked the tomato paste. It's getting thicker, but it's still got quite a ways to go. So we're gonna keep cooking that and let that go while we work on these lasagnas. So this first batch of noodles is done. I've got them rinsed off, and I'm gonna start cutting them to size. All right, so there we've got our first layer on. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting in our meat and cheese sauce. Oops. I am going to add a little bit of just store-bought Italian seasoning. Even though there's plenty in here, I always like to add a little more on the top of each layer. So I put down my noodles, and then I put down my meat and cheese sauce. Then I add the seasoning over the top of that, and then I put mozzarella cheese on top of that. All right. Start with this package. And I've got some other packages, like I said, that I bought specifically to make this lasagna. Those open. All right, so now I'm gonna just start putting the next layer of noodles down. I have all these little pieces that I cut. And then the water is almost boiling for the next batch of noodles to go in. I hope that I actually have more noodles in my cabinet because I don't think I'm gonna have enough. So I am gonna look in my pantry cabinet and see if I can find some more. You're in luck. I was just about to start to panic and I found this unopened box. Ooh, I think that will help us get through here. All right, so while I'm waiting for those other noodles to cook, I am gonna go ahead and finish off these 3 that I had enough pasta for. So I'm gonna spread another layer of, meat sauce on the top. And then we'll add some more seasoning and some more mozzarella. And hopefully I have enough mozzarella. I'm not sure I'm gonna have enough. Well, that's okay. If we run out of mozzarella before we get everything made, I can just bag up some of that meat sauce and we'll put it back in the freezer. Or we'll put it in the freezer. And then I can buy some more cheese with some of my weekly allowance for that. Whoops. And we can finish them up on another day. All right, so these 3 that are finished, I am going to wrap them in plastic and then wrap them in foil. And then on each one of them, I'm just going to write what this is and the date. And then when I get them all done, then we'll take them down and put them in the freezer. Alrighty. Here's the next batch of noodles done. All right, so there's those 3. So we'll get the next layer of meat sauce on those. And then we'll see how much cheese we have left. Okay, I think we're going to be able to make 1 more pan of lasagna. But I cooked a bunch more noodles that I didn't need. And then I think what I might do is cook up some different pasta and stir it all together. And then we can top that with whatever cheese we want and still make these pans. So I found a box of rigatoni in my cabinet. So I'm gonna go ahead and when these lasagna noodles are done, I'm going to go ahead and finish this last lasagna, and then I'm going to cook that rigatoni and just mix the rigatoni with what is left of my meat sauce and put it in these pans. And then I have some white cheddar and I have some Monterey Jack, which the Monterey Jack will be good. So I think I might shred up some Monterey Jack and just put it all together and then top it with Monterey Jack, and that will be good as well. So I'm not gonna wrap these until I'm done with this last one, so I can make sure I use all this cheese up. Make sure that everything has enough cheese. So I'll go ahead and fill this last lasagna pan here, or not fill it, but put some sauce in the bottom. Like that. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and pour what's left of this into my meat sauce, since it's not really enough to do anything else with. All right, so I do have just a little bit left. I'm gonna go ahead and just divide that into these other 3 pans. Pan of water is heating to cook the rigatoni. I'll go ahead and wrap these last 4 lasagna up, and then I can get them down into my basement freezer. All right, so I carried those lasagnas downstairs. They're in my freezer. I've got them sitting on that cookie sheet, and once they're frozen solid so they're not so floppy, then I can move them and bring my cookie sheet back upstairs. I just put the rigatoni in the water, which I need to stir. And so while that is cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and shred this hunk of Monterey Jack cheese that I have. I do have another block if I feel like I need it when I'm putting these together. And I took a look at the box of the rigatoni, and its sell-by date is later this summer, so I've probably had it for a couple of years. So that was an unexpected thing that I was able to get out of my cabinets, and it will be turned into something that's a final product and really easy to just pull out of my freezer in the morning, let it thaw during the day, throw it in the oven at night, and it'll be a nice, quick, easy dinner that I don't have to do anything except add a side. So I may need to shred some of that other block, but I'm not going to shred it until I start putting these together and see how much I actually need. So I am going to go ahead and add some of this Italian seasoning to the meat and cheese sauce that's left, and stir that in since I won't be doing layers. It's done. I'm going to stir it into our meat sauce. All right, that looks yummy. So I'm going to take, I've got 2 pans left here. Well, I've got more, but I've got 2 out of that last package. And I am just going to start filling them with our pasta and meat sauce mix. I don't think I'll be able to get all of this in these 2 pans, so I'm going to go ahead and get one more. Alright, so let's get the rest of this. Oh, this pan is so big, or this bowl, I mean, is so big. It was great for mixing it, but now it's hard for dumping the last of it out because I'm going to end up throwing it all over my counter if I do that. Okay. So that filled 3 more of these little square pans. So I'm going to take this Monterey Jack cheese and just cover the top. And I am going to need to shred some more of that other block. And I actually forgot I had this. This is a brick of mozzarella. So I'm going to go ahead and shred that first. And we'll see how much of these other 2 pans this covers. Probably quite a bit, I would guess. Alrighty. This is much softer and more difficult to shred, but it's working. Too bad I forgot I had that. I probably could have finished the lasagnas, but that's okay. That other pasta needed to be used as well, so this works, and it gives us a little bit of variety even though it's essentially the same thing. Pasta and meat sauce and cheese. This will just give us some variety in the way that it's put together. And plus, my grandkids, if they're here, are probably more likely to eat this than the lasagna, because, you know, kids are weird. If things look funny to them, you know, they won't even try them. I mean, I guess I don't really blame them. I don't eat things. I have a hard time trying new things that I don't like the way they look. All right. We'll get the rest of this cheese out of the grater. All right, so there are these 3 pans of the pasta and meat sauce all done. So we'll go ahead and get all the rest of these wrapped up and get these in the freezer as well. All right, the paste is getting really close to being done. So I can, I'm not sure you can see here, so I can drag a path through it, and it still fills back in, but it's very slow now. So we just want this to cook down a little more until when I drag my spoon through it, it doesn't fill back in even with liquid. So I want to keep a closer eye on it now at this very latest stage of this. I got my canner out and it's full of water. I've got my half-pint jars in some hot water so that they stay hot. Oh, ouchie. So that when I fill them with this hot sauce that it doesn't break. But I really want to keep an eye on it now so that I don't burn it at this very late stage. I would be sad if I spent the last 2 days cooking this down in various stages and then scorched it. I would be so sad. It does smell really good though. I love how tomato paste smells. That super concentrated tomato smell. I just splashed this hot tomato on my finger and that didn't feel very good. So I've got this cooking on the lowest setting on my stove for this bigger burner because that's the right size for this pan. So the other bigger burner on my stove is in the back, and the way that my stove is designed, I can't get this pan, my canner, all the way on that, so I've had to put it on one of these smaller ones up front just to make sure that my water's getting heated. And once I'm able to put this paste into jars, then I'll go ahead and move my canner to this bigger burner so that it's on the right size. I've never had good luck trying to seed start tomatoes before. I typically just end up buying the plants. But I did try this year. Oh, we're getting really close. I did try, I bought seeds for several different varieties of tomatoes. At least one of them, I don't remember exactly what I bought. We are going to be going through our seeds in an upcoming video in, I don't know, maybe in a week or so, just to see what we've got and what I might need to still order. But I know that I did order at least one variety of paste tomato. Now, whether or not I can get those started and going from seed is another story. Like I said, I typically don't have good luck. But I did also, I've got a, like a grow stand, the shelving with the lights, and that is actually supposed to be delivered today. So I will be setting it up sometime in the next week or so. Figuring out where the best place for me to put it in my house is, so that sometime next month I can start putting together some of my seed starts for the early varieties of my fruits and vegetables. So this paste is getting really close. And if I had cooked everything that I had, all of it on the stove top where I could control the heat a little more, you know, in a more concentrated area, it typically takes about maybe 3 or 4 hours based on the amount of tomatoes I had. But I started mine from frozen, as you guys saw, in my roaster pan so that I could just set the temperature and let them go. I didn't have to pay as much attention to it, whereas when you're on the stovetop, you really have to pay close attention. And plus that allowed me to just set it to the corner of my island and just let it go, and I could just stir it periodically and it was out of my way. Whereas having it on the stove constantly, you know, then I've got to move things around if I'm cooking dinner or cooking other things. So I did have a few lasagna noodles left over, a couple of the whole ones and a few of the little pieces I had cut off. And I took those out and I gave them to my chickens as a treat. And when I threw them out there, I was laughing because they were fighting over them, so I'm sure they're enjoying them. Oh well, I'm sure they're long gone now. But, so that was a nice treat for them. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to end up with. I got out 6 jars, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to get closer to 4. Okay, I think this is ready. When I drag my spoon through it, it takes quite a while for it to fill back in. So there is still a little bit of water that I can see in it, but for my purposes, I'm going to call this good. So I'm going to get my jars out of the hot water, and I'm going to use a spoon to fill them. Actually, now that I'm putting this in, I think I need to cook it just a little bit longer. There's a little more water than I thought there was, but it shouldn't take much longer. All right, so when I pick this up on a spoon, you can see that it just sits on the spoon like that, whereas a sauce would drip off. So that's what we want. So I'm going to spoon this into my jars. Try not to drip it everywhere. And we want to leave a 1/2 inch of head space in our jars. I only get 3 jars out of this. Yep, I think we're going to get 3 jars. Ooh. And that's okay. Tomato paste, you know, is super concentrated because we've gotten rid of all that excess water, or a lot of that excess water. So when you add it to a dish, it doesn't take as much to get that nice tomato flavor. All right. So I'm going to use a paper towel and I'm going to wipe the edges, the rims of my jars. And you can, I don't know if you can really see, but there's just a little bit of water sitting on the top of these jars, so I did get rid of most of it. So now I'm going to use a new canning lid and a clean ring. And I'm going to move my canner over here to this better sized burner. And I'm going to set my jars in the canner. And I'm going to need to add some more water, so I've got these jars covered up. But then we'll let that heat until it's boiling, and then we'll want to process that for 45 minutes. All right, so we've got about an inch or so of water covering our jars. I'm going to put the lid on, and we're going to let that heat up until it's boiling. And once it starts to boil, then I will go ahead and set the timer for 45 minutes. We'll let it process 45 minutes, and then we'll turn it off, let it sit for about 5 minutes with the lid still on but the heat off. And after that, we'll take our jars out and set them on a towel to start cooling. We're going to start on our shrimp tacos. So the first thing we're going to make is a cabbage mix. You can buy green and red cabbage and shred your own. I cheated and just bought coleslaw mix. It's already shredded. It's got a little carrot in there, so that's nice. So we need total 3 cups of this. So that's going to use just about half of our bag. And that is good because then we've got this other half that we can use for something else this week. So if you're going to do your own cabbage, you need 2 cups of shredded red cabbage and 1 cup of green. Like I said, I just used the coleslaw mix. And then we want to add a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. The recipe calls for a tablespoon of white wine vinegar. I don't have any white wine vinegar, so I'm going to use some balsamic. And then we need a little bit of salt and pepper. And then the recipe calls for a teaspoon of honey. When we've made this in the past, I have used quite a bit more than a teaspoon. I don't know how much that is, maybe a tablespoon and a half. And then we're going to mix that up, and we're just going to set it to the side while we do all of the rest of our prep. You could just use a plain white vinegar if you don't have white wine vinegar. And I think that's what I've done in the past because I don't remember it being dark like this, but that's okay. It smells really good. So we're going to set that to the side, and then we're going to cut up some vegetables. So this full recipe for this piece is an avocado corn mixture. I don't like avocados, so my husband will cut one up for his own. And I typically don't put corn in it. I might today, but we need a half of a cucumber and a half of a medium tomato. Because it's January, I bought the grape tomatoes because they tend to have a little bit better flavor. So we just want to dice up our cucumber. So there I've got my potatoes, and then I need 1 green onion. I've got this half of a cucumber that I can use for a salad or something else later this week. And then we want to add the juice from a half of a medium lime. Juice this right into our bowl here, or into my face, whichever. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut up the rest of this lime, and I'm going to cut up this other lime into wedges so that we'll have it to put on our tacos. So I'm just going to give this a stir. And I don't think I've typically added corn in the past. I honestly, have I added corn before? Do you know?
Yes.
I have? Okay.
Yeah, you did one too.
Okay. All right, so my husband's gonna bring up some corn so I can add that. I didn't remember, he said that we have added corn to it before. Okay, and this called for half a cup of corn. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull some in there. I'll stick the rest of this in my refrigerator so we can eat it with something later this week. Alright, let me stir this corn in now. The bowl probably wasn't quite big enough, but that's alright. Okay, there's that. I'm going to give this cabbage a stir. And I don't think that we've had this since last summer.
Yeah.
And that we've had it a few times now. It's really good. All right, so I'm going to mix up the shrimp seasoning. So we need a teaspoon of lemon pepper. So this is for 3/4 of a pound of shrimp, and I have a little over a pound. So I'm going to add a little more. Need a teaspoon, or actually just a little more than a teaspoon of garlic salt. We want to use about 3/4 of a teaspoon of chili powder. This calls for chipotle chili powder. I don't have any, so I'm just going to use regular chili powder. A half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. A half a teaspoon of onion powder. Calls for also a half a teaspoon of marjoram. I don't have any marjoram, so I'm obviously just going to skip that. Half a teaspoon of dried cilantro, which I have some freeze dried here. I'm just going to kind of crumble it up in here. Okay, so the recipe calls for raw shrimp. I had frozen cooked shrimp, and so that's what I'm using. That's what I've used in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and put some olive oil in my skillet, and then I'll mix the seasoning in with my shrimp and throw that in. I want to add a little bit of lime juice, so I'm just going to pour it in the bowl that had the seasoning in it so I can get all of that out of there. Alright, while the shrimp is cooking, we are going to make our cilantro lime cream sauce. For our sauce, we need a half a cup of sour cream. We want to add about 2 tablespoons of ranch dressing. All right, so we've got half a cup or so of sour cream, about 2 tablespoons of ranch dressing. I'm going to add a little bit of lime juice, some cilantro, some honey, I have to warm this up again. Maybe. Oh no, here we go. A little bit of smoked paprika, 1/4 teaspoon. And then salt and pepper to taste. I'm just going to add just a little bit of salt and a tiny bit of pepper. And then we're going to stir that all together. That needs a little more lime juice. There we go. That is yummy. Alright, I'm going to put this stuff away while my shrimp cooks. Alright, everything is done. And I have some tortillas here. You can use corn, flour, whatever you want. I have these small, are these flour?
Yeah. It's like,
I think these are kind of flour. I don't know what they are. Anyway, I just kind of toasted these up in the skillet with some vegetable spray. And so we're gonna go ahead and start putting our plates together. All right, so I put some shrimp down the middle of my tortillas. And now I'm going to add a little bit of the cabbage on top of that. We're gonna add a little bit of the corn and tomato and cucumber mix, but I think I need a bigger spoon than this. So we'll add some of this on top of the cabbage. Whoops. Drop it all over my plate. And then I'm going to squeeze a little bit of lime over it. And then I'm going to put some of our cream sauce on the top. This one's a little vinegary, but that's okay. I'll just take a bite out of that side first. So my husband is putting some avocado on his before we give him a taste test.
it's pretty
All right.
A little fatty.
These are so good. All right, so that is it for today's video. So I've got 7 pans of lasagna and 3 pans of the rotini, or what was it? The rigatoni pasta mix in the freezer. So those will be nice to just pull out. I can pull them out, just set them on my stove or counter to start thawing, and then throw them in the oven when it's time for dinner, and they'll be nice and simple. We can add a salad and some bread and we're ready to go. I got my tomatoes cooked down into paste. We ended up with 3 jars. So those will be nice to add to other dishes when we need some kick of tomato flavor. And then we've got our shrimp tacos with our cilantro lime sauce, cream sauce, whatever they're called. Let me see. Oh, shrimp tacos with cilantro lime cream. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around with me today and watching all of these items as we made them. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks, guys. Now my husband and I are going to go eat our dinner.